Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of Outside the Letterbox. Today we're going to be discussing what we've watched recently and discuss, as well as some film news, and discuss Marvel Studios' most recent blockbuster, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Last week we were all sort of busy, so we didn't get a chance to record a podcast, but we're back. You can find more of our episodes of Outside the Letterbox on our website, the-letterbox.com, and on iTunes just by searching for Outside the Letterbox, as well as on Feedburner. Leave us a review on iTunes or a comment on our site. Today I am joined by my co-hosts.
Hey, it's Joe.
I'm Nick.
And so, yeah, we're going to start off with Nick. Nick, what have you watched recently?
This week I watched quite a few movies, but three that really kind of stood out to me. The first one is Wizards. It's a Ralph Bakshi animated movie from 1977, and it's really kind of weird. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ralph Bakshi, but he makes movies that are, compared to what Disney was putting out at the time, they're very cheap, so they have kind of a crude style to them. He's, if you know Ralph Bakshi, he's notorious for either making Fritz the Cat, which was the first X-rated animated movie of all the time, or a lot of people also know him for making the Lord of the Rings adaptation. So this was the film he made right before he did Lord of the Rings, and it was instrumental in getting him that job. And it's kind of a weird Tolkien-esque fantasy that's set in a post-nuclear war future. I guess humanity kind of blows each other to oblivion, and what's left of humanity kind of mutates into, I guess, like orc-like creatures. And at the same time, you got all these fairies and elves and stuff that used to populate the Earth come like out of hiding after all this nuclear fallout. And so it's kind of a weird movie. And like the villain, the whole thing is set 2 million years in the future, and so the villain like rediscovers like propaganda and technology and stuff like that. And it's a very weird, like, it's definitely kind of dated by the 70s aesthetic and kind of the themes that were going on, at least politically, of the time. But I found it very interesting, and I think just because like that style of animation is something that not a lot of people are familiar with, and it's something that I grew up with or was familiar with to an extent, kind of the non-Disney, non-DreamWorks, those smaller animation houses that were in the 70s and the 80s. So yeah, that's Wizards. It's kind of a weird movie. It's kind of hard to recommend just because it's so out there. But if you ever get a chance, I think you might be able to find something worth watching in it.
Huh. What I want to know is, how have I not heard of this movie? Like, this sounds like something that would be right up my alley.
Yeah, no, Ralph Bakshi, his movies are kind of all over the place. He either does like these straight up urban city movies, or he does these like, far-flung fantasy movies. And Joe, you would probably actually dig it quite a bit. It reminded me of, there are a couple other like 80s forgotten animated movies. Another one is like Star Chaser, The Legend of Orr. Now they're just kind of, I don't know if it's, I don't know what it is about the animation style, because I know these things were made on kind of like shoestring budgets and stuff. So actually to complete the final battle sequence, they had to use rotoscoping, and they rotoscoped elements of like old public domain war movies. So the end battle is this really like, I don't think it was intended to be this way, but it comes off as a really psychedelic because it goes from traditional animation to rotoscoping all of a sudden. Very weird, very strange, but I recommend it if you watch the trailer and it looks like something that interests you. I would definitely check it out.
All right. That sounds like it would not interest me.
Probably not. But then the next movie I watched was actually really, really good. It was called Ace in the Hole. It's a Billy Wilder movie from, I think, 1951. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with Billy Wilder, but he's mostly known for his comedies like Some Like It Hot or The Apartment. Although it's funny, like, I don't think The Apartment, watching it today, it's not really that much. It's more of a drama than a comedy. But Ace in the Hole is it was really interesting to watch it because it doesn't feel dated. I think it's because the idea behind the movie is still relevant today. So the basic idea of the movie is Kirk Douglas plays this kind of disgraced reporter out in New Mexico who's trying to find a way to get his job back in New York, and he stumbles onto this small town where a guy's trapped in a cave that collapsed on him, and so basically he kind of builds up the story, especially because he's the first guy on the scene, so he kind of builds it up, gets all the publicity going, and then he kind of manages to take control of the town and the rescue crew. And so like there's one part where they're trying to drill the guy out, but then Kirk Douglas finds out there's another way to drill in that'll extend the broadcast. Instead of getting him out in 2 days, it'll take him a week to get out. So the whole time he's basically drawing this story out as long as he can, as long as he can, just so he can get his career back in New York. And it kind of reminded me a lot of like the stuff we've been seeing on CNN with kind of the Malaysian air flight and just kind of like all these people, doing what they can to stretch a story that really doesn't need to be more than like a 5-minute piece and stretching out for days and weeks and so it's a really kind of dark movie, especially for the 50s, and I think that was a huge reason why it failed when it first came out, is because it's not really kind to people in the the news industry or even like audience members, because the whole the mountaintop where the guy's trapped, the spectators all come, and to entertain themselves they wind up setting up like a big carnival and like hot dog stands and like all that stuff, and this whole tragedy around this one guy getting trapped in a mountain is kind of turned to a big carnival. And I think that that situation is still something that happens today in the media, especially journalistic media.
Yeah. Cool.
And then the last movie I saw, and we could talk about this a little bit with the main topic, was 3 Days into the Condor, which, according to the filmmakers of Captain America, was a huge influence on them making the movie. I don't know if you guys are very familiar with 70s thrillers, but it kind of fits right in with that genre. There's a lot of paranoia and hitmen, and Robert Redford's kind of interesting in the movie because he plays more of a bookish type, so he's not like, it's kind of one of those funny roles where like it's a big name star that everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is one of the greatest, most attractive actors, and he's kind of like wearing glasses and reading from books and being a nerd in the beginning. So it's a very entertaining kind of
reading from books. What a joke.
Yeah, what a joke. So it's a very entertaining thriller that at least like structurally has a lot in common with the Winter Soldier, just in terms of Robert Redford finding out something he's not supposed to, getting tracked down. He's got to hide in other people's places and kind of get ordinary civilians to help him out. It's very enjoyable if you like that kind of a thing, and really interesting to watch, I think, after seeing Captain America.
Sweet, cool. I haven't seen 3D. I actually haven't seen any of the movies you mentioned. Although I am familiar with 3 Days of the Condor. That's actually a movie I think my dad would bring up every now and then. But I guess that was more his time. But I will hopefully have a chance to check out 3 Days of the Condor. So, Joe, that brings us to you.
Nope. Alrighty. So this past week, I actually haven't been watching a whole lot of movies recently. I've been watching Fullmetal Alchemist. So my movie watching, I've been lax in, I guess, if that's a bad thing to say. I don't know. Anywho, I did see In the Loop, which is the reason I watched it is because it's a comedy starring Peter Capaldi, and I know that with Doctor Who, him coming out as the new Doctor and all that kind of stuff, I kind of wanted to see something that he had done before, especially something that he was well known for. And so playing this character, I forget his name off the top of my head, but it's a political comedy, I guess you'd say. It's kind of an interesting movie though, because it's kind of a fly on the wall sort of movie. As if you're just kind of following these characters around. There's barely any music, just a lot of dialogue, like a lot of characters walking around talking about. It's basically it's about these people. They're talking about trying to prevent a war from happening. It's kind of like you have like the British government, you have the American government, and they're kind of talking with each other. And it's honestly, there's not really a whole lot to say about this movie. A lot of it is just people kind of walking around, going between different meetings, yelling at each other. I think one of the reasons that the movie became so popular is because it's very vulgar in the dialogue. As in, like, a lot of people love to sling insults at each other. Peter Capaldi especially, I think he's very well known for his potty mouth in some of his movies, and this one especially. He loves to sling around just kind of the most bizarre, out of context insults at people when he gets really mad. And I think for the most part that's what a lot of people just kind of find humorous about it, because the plot isn't terribly interesting. It's somewhat interesting, but it's kind of like in the dialogue, these people will suddenly just throw out the most bizarre insults at each other, that kind of stuff. It is genuinely funny at times. It's just kind of funny to see a lot of these actors. I know that James Gandolfini was in it. I didn't even realize he was in the movie before I started watching it, and I was really sad because he's really good in this movie. But it's just, I don't know, it's kind of fun for a little watch if you're into that kind of thing. The plot doesn't really go anywhere; it just kind of meanders along until they feel like stopping, basically. So,
isn't it I could be wrong, but isn't it based on like a British TV show or something?
I wouldn't be surprised at all. It really feels like that. Actually, it kind of feels like something along the lines of like the British version of The Office. Just, if they didn't have any restrictions on what they're allowed to say.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Another movie I watched was the original Fright Night. Actually, this is my first time watching it, which is really surprising me because that seems like something I would have watched back when I saw An American Werewolf in London. It kind of has a similar. I mean, like, they're very different kinds of movies, but they both have kind of that same feeling of they would make a good double feature, if you know what I mean.
There's like, even just the way they do the makeup feels very similar. Maybe it is. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same people doing it. But that's actually one of the things I love about both of those movies is the practical makeup, especially in Fright Night, is like terrifying. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it was funny because going into Fright Night, I knew about the movie. I knew what the plot was about. I knew the actors in it, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect, though. I wasn't sure if it was going to be like a straight up horror movie or if it was going to be more of a comedy, because trying to compare it to trailers for the new one, which seems like it's kind of going for more of a comedic take. I really had no idea what to expect, and honestly, coming out of it, it's a little of both. I mean, like sometimes it's a comedy, sometimes it's a horror movie. I think it's just kind of a movie that's not trying to be a certain genre in particular. It's just trying to have fun with its premise and just go along with whatever happens, I loved the cast in this movie, especially. I know we had Roddy McDowall was in this. This is the only thing I think I remember seeing him in, other than Planet of the Apes, actually. So it was funny to see him without his monkey makeup on.
It's weird to see you without you looking like a monkey.
Exactly. But I don't know. He was a lot of fun. He reminds me of what's his name? That one actor from the only thing I can think of he was in was The Last Starfighter, but I know he's in something more well known. Oh, The Music Man, the main character from The Music Man. He really reminds me of that guy. I forget his name off the top of my head.
You're talking about the original Music Man, right?
Yes, the original Music Man. Yeah.
Not the Matthew Broderick one.
Yeah. No. Roddy McDowall in this one, he has fun playing just kind of like this actor who plays this persona on screen. and he doesn't think he has to be an actual vampire hunter, and then he gets thrown into this thing where, oh no, crap, vampires exist. It's a lot of fun. One of my favorite things also was noticing there's one actor in here, the henchman, I guess you'd say, of the vampire in this movie. But I recognized him from another extremely low-budget horror comedy called House 2, and I saw this guy in this movie. I'm like, holy cow! I think I'm watching all the wrong kinds of movies when you recognize an obscure side character actor from one small horror movie, and you notice him in another cult horror movie. I think I need to start updating what kinds of movies I'm watching.
Nice.
But anyway, Fright Night is great. I liked it. I can't wait to see the remake, because I've heard the remake's pretty good too.
I was just going to say, while you said the remake looks like it's going for a more comedic approach, that was actually because I really liked the original Fright Night, and when I saw the remake in theaters, and something I was really concerned about was them like completely changing the tone, because the tone of the original Fright Night is great, because it's like a nice balance between comedy and horror, and it looked like they were just sort of like getting rid of the horror, because that's kind of more difficult to do these days, because there's horror movies coming out all the time. But I will say, I think they did a really good job. Like, I would say the remake of Fright Night is probably the best vampire movie since maybe Interview with the Vampire. Just in regards to like keeping with what vampires actually are, and actually making them somewhat terrifying. And I think everybody in that movie does a great job. And I'm also, it's funny because I'm going to talk about a movie with him in it, but I'm a big like Anton Yelchin fan. I haven't seen a movie that he's been in that I haven't really at least liked his character in, or his acting job in. So anyway, you should really see the new Fright Night, I guess is what I'm saying.
I should. I really want to. I should. Maybe I'll watch that this week. I'll talk about Fright Night.
All right. You had
and
one
then
more.
finally, the last movie I just want to touch on real quick is I watched We Are What We Are, which a lot of people, I'm guessing probably almost everyone who's watching this probably hasn't heard of. But it was a horror movie. It was an independent horror movie that came out, I think, a year or two ago. And I had seen like a trailer for it before it came out. And I'm like, oh, that looks interesting, different. And then I just kind of forgot about it until I noticed it was on Netflix recently. So
it's actually not as old as you think it is, Joe. I think it's like at least for like wide release, like for video or whatever. I think it's only been out maybe a year at the most.
Probably that wouldn't be surprising. That would surprise me. I know a lot of times these smaller movies don't get released for like a couple of years. But this one I wouldn't be surprised if it came out like a year ago. It feels fairly recent too.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I was getting you off track.
Oh, no, but anyways, it's kind of a movie where you don't. I mean, like, even if you watch the trailer, you don't really know what kind of movie it's going to be until you get into it. It's basically about this family, this dad and his two daughters and his son, and his wife dies at the beginning of the movie, and so it's about them kind of dealing with it. But this is a really strange movie because it is a horror movie, and you find out that this family is kind of they're very kind of, I don't want to say old-fashioned, but they're very stuck in their ways, and they have kind of their own family rituals and that kind of stuff going on. I don't want to give away too much of the movie, even though like there are certain things that you kind of know about going in already. But if you are a fan of horror movies, I'm just going to say as little about it as I can, because it's best to just kind of not know very much about this movie going in. But it is a very weird movie. It is a very dark movie. I can't say I was a huge fan of it, honestly, because it felt like it was a movie made by a film student who's trying to make an art film, but at the same time he really wants to make like this low budget exploitation movie, and so he gets stuck between the two. So what you end up getting is kind of an exploitative horror movie. Especially in the way it ends. It kind of feels like, oh, okay, I'm not sure if that was really worth it all in the end, but it feels like someone was trying to make a movie that was trying to mean something, and in the end he just made kind of a low budget horror movie.
Dude, an exploitative horror movie sounds right up your alley. I don't see the problem.
It's like honestly, it felt like I was watching a Lars von Trier movie, but toned down a lot.
That sounds absolutely miserable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are things about it I liked. I don't want to say it's kind of fun at times. I don't know if it's intentional, but part of that's because you got Michael Parks is in the movie, and
nice.
For those that don't know, he is most well known for his character of was it Earl McGraw? Is that it, Nick?
Oh, and Kill Bill.
Yeah, in all his basic Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez movies. Basically this guy is an actor. He's known for doing a lot of B movies. He was in From Dusk Till Dawn, From Dusk Till Dawn 3, Kill Bill, Grindhouse, all that kind of stuff. He's a great actor, and you see him in this movie, and really his scenes are the best parts of the movie because he's just kind of going along with the premise of the movie. He plays his character the way he always plays his characters. He's kind of reserved, but he kind of has a spark in his eyes where you can tell that he's kind of just having fun with the role, So anyway, it's a very interesting movie. If you're a fan of horror movies, you should probably check it out. It just didn't do a whole lot for me.
Cool. All right, that was We Are What We Are. So I want to talk about two movies. I'm going to talk about this is one I watched a while ago, actually, called Odd Thomas, which was a direct-to-video movie. And the reason I want to talk about it, I did not watch it recently. I watched it in December. But I want to talk about it because it's been brought up, I guess, or being brought up in some of the circles that we run in. It's based on a book written by Dean Koontz, who is a fairly well-known fictional author. I don't know if you guys have read anything by him. No?
Sounds familiar, but I don't.
Okay, so he's a fairly well-known fictional author, but he's also a Christian author. And there's this weird thing going on where people are spreading this movie around because it's written by a Christian author, as if it's a good quality family film. I would just like to set the record clear and say that this is a pretty horrible movie. Not only so Anton Yelchin's in it, and I actually think he does a great job as the main character. And a lot of the visual effects in it are very basic, not basic, but just kind of, I guess, cheap. And it's because it's an independently produced film. Let me just read you guys the little summary here. It says, in a California desert town, a short-order cook with clairvoyant abilities encounters a mysterious man with a link to dark, threatening forces. So, the idea of it and the concept of it is actually pretty interesting and entertaining, but the execution of this movie is so unbalanced, and because it's trying to be somewhat independent and heartfelt and fun, but at the same time there's parts of it that are scary, and at the same time there's parts of it that are like a Michael Bay Transformers movie. Well, actually, specifically in the way it treats its leading female character, it's just so it's very sexist, I guess is the way to put it, and very overly sexualized. And you could probably make the same argument for Scarlett Johansson in any Marvel movie, but it's almost I guess at least Scarlett Johansson is wearing a uniform in the Marvel movies that makes sense. In Odd Thomas, it feels like the main character is wearing clothing that is simply to make her a sex object, which is messed up. But actually, this movie was directed by Steven Sommers. Do you guys?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Huh.
He did The Mummy, The Mummy Returns, Van Helsing, and And so I don't know what exactly happened that he's. I think he produced it. He produced and wrote it with Dean Koontz. I don't know what happened that he's directing this kind of a movie now after those, because I didn't think any of those. While some of them are bad, I didn't think any of them did horribly.
You love G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, I'm sure.
I actually really enjoyed. I actually really enjoy the first two Mummy movies. So, but anyway, so that's Odd Thomas. I am strongly recommending not to watch it. Unfortunately, because I think it's a really good idea that with just like a better like idea of what a better vision, a more coherent vision, could have made a much better movie out of that idea. I've heard the book is really good, so I guess go read the book because I've heard that's much better. Anyway, you guys have never even heard of it, right?
No, actually, I remember before it came out, I saw the trailer for it, and I remember watching that because it seemed like the sort of thing that I'd be really into. Honestly, I was getting very the Frighteners vibes from it, from the trailer.
Yeah, actually, that's not a bad comparison, although I would say the Frighteners is much better.
Yeah. The thing is that I remember watching the trailer and I was getting mixed feelings because I felt like the movie looked really good, as in like Anton Yelchin looked like he did a great job. The writing just kind of as a whole, the movie looked really good. I felt like the trailer was edited really, really poorly though, and it made it look like a really cheap, kind of a terrible movie. And so I wasn't quite sure whether that leaked into the entire film as a whole, or whether it was just a bad editing on the trailer's part. But I felt like there was a good movie in there, but I just didn't get around to seeing it.
It definitely leaks into the whole movie because like there's parts of it that are like, man, this is like really well produced and well acted, and then there's other parts that you're just like, what the hell? Like,
yeah.
What are you doing? So anyway, so the next movie I'm going to talk about, I actually wanted to see in theaters but never got a chance to catch, and I know Nick wanted to. I couldn't find anyone else who had seen it for a while and wanted to talk about it, but I finally saw Inside Llewyn Davis. And if for no other reason than just the way this movie looks, I loved it. It looks amazing. It's just a beautiful looking movie. And it's funny because I heard a lot of reviews talking about how unlikable the main character is. And maybe it's just me, but I actually really liked the main character.
That's funny.
And he does some pretty like shitty things in the movie, but he is like for some reason I just like I understood everything he did, and I thought the whole movie was really interesting, darkly funny in a lot of ways. I was laughing at a lot of it, and I really liked the movie, and I like some of the Coen Brothers movies. I don't like all of them. But I really enjoyed Inside Llewyn Davis. So Nick, you probably have something to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. We could probably dedicate a whole podcast to this movie. I think there's a lot of symbolism in the movie that because there are a lot of people I know who their main criticism was that like there's nothing to the movie, and I think it's because like it just kind of abruptly ends and whatever, and there's no like clear-cut conclusion. So there are a lot of people who think, oh, just like this stuff happens, and like a lot of people think the cat was just thrown in to kind of like entertain the audience and distract from what was lacking in the story. But I think there's way more to the movie than its detractors aren't giving it credit for.
Yeah, my response to that would be just that I think it's a very character-driven movie.
Yeah.
And while like I've heard interviews about like with the Coen Brothers, or read about them at least, where they talk about like once they had the idea of the cat, it felt like the movie came together better.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what people are talking about, but it didn't. The cat made it more entertaining, I think.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily make the rest of the movie pointless.
I think
And
I still think the funniest moment in the movie is when he goes when Lewin goes back to I don't know if they were like his sponsors or just like people that he was friends with. He goes back to their house after losing the cat and he brings it back, and all of a sudden the lady starts freaking out and she has the cat in her arms and she just starts screaming, "Where's his scrotum?" It's such a random, like, the line, like, in and of itself is just like a weird line, but just in the context of the movie, it's so funny.
yeah,
Um,
it's a surprisingly funny movie for sure. The
yeah,
one,
Well, it's funny because I remember when I first saw it, I had very mixed feelings about the movie, but then because I felt like it was kind of unfocused, and I wasn't sure where it was going. But then I was thinking about it more, and maybe I'm reading too much into it. But that almost feels like that's the point of the movie, is that Lewin himself is unfocused. He doesn't know kind of where he's going. He's trying to get a job, but he's just kind of moving around a lot. And the film doesn't really have like it doesn't really have like a focused storyline. Like it follows Lewin, but it doesn't really go anywhere. And even the end, it doesn't really feel like it has any sort of real conclusion to the movie, which I felt actually fit it really well. It felt like a lot of for me at least, it felt like some of the Coen Brothers' older stuff, like Fargo or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Just kind of like it's not as interested in telling a set story, but it's just interested in following these characters and seeing where they're going. And so it's a good one. I think next to Raising Arizona and True Grit is probably one of my favorite Coen Brother movies.
it's interesting talking about kind of like what the movie's about and like the plot and stuff, because I think the movie cuts out at the right time if you think that the whole movie is basically about I guess artistic compromise or whatever, or an artistic integrity, because the whole movie he basically goes around trying to do his own thing and kind of detests all these like side gigs he gets, even though that's where he makes all the money. And the movie ends like 5 minutes after Bob Dylan goes on stage for the first time, and I think to the audience anyway, it's kind of like, all right, this guy might be done, so I think like, so it is very much more like a character plot than a concept plot that you're following the whole way through. And I think it starts right at the moment it's supposed to, and I think it ends right at the moment where, like, as far as the character is going to be able to take us in this world, because after that moment he probably just fades into obscurity.
that's
Exactly.
that's actually one question I had. That was like actually a confusing point for me. Did the same thing happen at the beginning as happened at the end, or did
No,
it
I
just
think I think it was a
happen
flashback,
again?
flash forward.
Oh, you think the beginning was a flash forward?
Yeah, I think, and then it cuts back around. I could be wrong because it's been 2 months since they've seen the movie, but that's what I remember my impression being.
Well, I just thought the exact same thing was happening again. I don't think there was any clear indication of how that was supposed to be.
Well, I think it's the same guy though that beats him up both times,
It
isn't
is,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, because it's his wife at the end that Lewin's making fun of. So
Right, but that's why that's my point is that I couldn't tell if it was the same thing happening, like
gotcha.
again, like if he had mocked the wife at some point before,
Mm,
or if it was like a flashback or flash forward
yeah.
at the beginning. That was confusing to me, and that was somewhat frustrating. But the only indication, I guess, was that like you didn't hear Bob Dylan in the beginning. So
Oh yeah, singing outside. Yeah.
so I don't know. That whole thing was sort of confusing to me. But
Yeah, same,
anyway,
same here. I agree. I was confused by that too.
um, maybe I watched again and looked more closely. Um, anyway, that sort of wraps up what we've watched recently. Did you guys have any news topics you wanted to talk about or highlight?
Um, I don't know about news topics, but the trailer for Zach Braff's "Wish I Was Here" kind of piqued my interest. I don't know, just because like I remember last year when when he started doing the Kickstarter, and there was a lot of controversy around that, and like that was kind of how I noticed the movie, and kind of like I remember reading like plot descriptions and whatever for it, and just thinking like, oh, it'll just be like some nice independent movie. But the trailer came out and it actually looks like really intriguing to me. I know Paul, we've talked about this. Like I haven't seen Garden State, so maybe like there's something I'm missing in there, but I don't know. That just looks really interesting to me.
Well, there's no robots or space in Garden State. So, you're not missing anything like that. But this is, I mean, as soon as I saw the trailer, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because if if you looked at the Kickstarter or read sort of the summaries, like it was very much what was described. It was just kind of interesting to see it, I guess, to see it as like polished and sci-fi looking in some of those parts,
Yeah.
But still, I'm very intrigued by the movie.
Yeah. It's funny, the space parts gave me I don't know how big of a Calvin and Hobbes fan you guys are, but it gave me a big Spaceman spiff.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I love Calvin Hobbes. Honestly, I need to see more of the movie before I can make any sort of preliminary judgments on it. But the trailer didn't really do anything to me. It looked like a
Yeah, the trailer doesn't really show anything. I mean, I guess the closest thing I can compare it to is probably that first Secret Life of Walter Mitty trailer.
no, last thing is that Secret Life of Walter Mitty. That I love the original trailer for that one because I mean, like, without giving away very much of the movie, it gave you this kind of sense of what the movie was, and it looked like it was very stylish, very fun, just something new and different. This one, honestly, Zach Braff kind of bugs me in this trailer. It almost feels like it's a non-comedic version of Gentlemen Broncos that thinks it's more important than it actually is. I don't know. It just some of the lines in the trailer just kind of rub me the wrong way. I'm like you think you're sounding important, but you're not really saying anything here. I don't know. I need to see more. I need to see some of those lines in context really before I can get more judgment of it.
Didn't you hate Gentlemen Broncos?
I really didn't like Gentlemen Broncos.
I don't think anybody liked Gentlemen Broncos.
I know one person who did.
Wait, who?
Mike Baggett.
I'm not gonna say anything. So, I just want to say about that. Like, have either of you seen Garden State?
I haven't. No.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, Nick might like it, but Joe, I don't think it's your kind of movie at all.
I don't would.
So I would not be. This is like Zach Braff has described the movie as sort of an unofficial sequel to Garden State. And I don't think Joe's gonna like it that much, no matter what. I just don't think it's Joe's kind of movie. But yeah, I was interested. I've been interested since he announced it, but I also love Garden State. So anyway, all right. I guess that brings us to our main topic of conversation this week, which is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think we've all now had a chance to see it. Yes?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and I'm just going to read a quick summary of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. So the little synopsis is: Steve Rogers struggles to embrace his role in the modern world and battles a new threat from old history, the Soviet agent known as the Winter Soldier. So I think we'll spend like the first 10 minutes or so talking about this just in general terms, and then we might do some spoiler stuff.
Yeah. I think we should definitely get into spoilers in this one towards the second half.
So anyway, I really enjoyed the movie. I have my issues with it, like almost every Marvel movie, except Thor, because Thor's flawless as a film. I liked it. I don't know what else to say about it.
Are we dividing into...
The thing about Marvel movies is that there really isn't a whole lot to say about them. I don't think I've seen one that I've disliked. But I mean, at this point, you kind of know what to expect going in. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna have some great characters. It's gonna have some great action, that kind of stuff. With a few exceptions, it's not really going to be anything more than that. but it's not going to be disappointing by any means. So it's kind of like, I went in this one, I got what I expected, and I had fun.
Yeah, I really like this one. I don't know where I would rank it if we were ranking all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, but I think changing up the genre, I think was a very good thing, especially if they want to if they want to go through on their plan to keep all these movies going until what is it 2028 they announced or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and like they did that with Iron Man 3, they did that with the first Captain America movies. They kind of made it a superhero movie, but in a slightly different genre. And so especially when you have like Guardians of the Galaxy or Ant-Man, which Edgar Wright has said he wants to kind of do it as like a superhero heist movie. Um, I think that's going to be the real thing in deciding how long these movies stick around for. So I very much enjoyed it as kind of like a 70s political thriller, especially like the ending when they start playing the Trouble Man music and they start rounding up some of the villains. It was getting kind of like a montagey thing, felt very 70s to me, and I really dug that.
Yeah, I guess I think Captain America, this one is actually one of the better Marvel movies in recent history. But as a whole, superhero movies to me are becoming they're becoming more and more like what Goosebumps books were to me when I was a kid. Um, in the specifically Marvel movies actually, and maybe DC movies are more like, I don't know. Let's hope they're more like a Harry Potter or something where they stand out in terms of what I read when I was a child. But and I guess I just mean by that they're starting to become so common and so sort of like they're fun and they're slightly different, but they're all sort of the same in the end. And some you might remember more than others, but they're pretty much all in the same boat of movies, and starting to be more and more. And I wrote a whole article about it. I do think we're starting to get oversaturated by these movies, and I think it's going to be annoying to the film goers and annoying to the studios when they have 8 superhero movies coming out and they're all only making $100 million because no one can really go see all of them, you know?
I'm telling you guys, we need Tim Burton's Superman movie with Nicolas Cage to get us out of this.
Oh my gosh, that'd be the best.
Right. So
it's actually interesting because right after you published that article, Paul, there was an article saying the exact opposite thing on Badass Digest, and it was kind of interesting because it was kind of written in a tongue-in-cheek way and kind of pointing out the same thing that I did, that like, oh, the year superhero crop is some of them are some of them don't even come out as a superhero movie because Captain America, you'd almost think it's just a paranoid spy movie. X-Men, it's just a post-apocalyptic time travel movie like Terminator. Guardians of the Galaxy is just a bunch of superheroes in space, and that how Spider-Man's the only actual superhero movie this year, and then kind of saying how we're complaining about 4 superhero movies in 1 year when back in 1957 we had 61 Western releases, and kind of like how that was such a huge genre for 30-40 years. And, I don't know what you would say to that, but
the reason I would say that that's BS, try and keep it PG, is that while Captain America does try and be more like a paranoid spy thriller, it is not graded on the same standards as something like that would be by audiences or by critics or by anyone. A paranoid spy thriller wouldn't be able to get away with putting a man in a computer with 1970s technology. It wouldn't be able to get away with a little hand drill that can somehow drill through the planet. Like, that stuff, to me, I totally dug everything else about the movie except for the comic book stuff. And this movie is getting such high praise that stuff would come up, and I'd be like, what the heck? Like, you can't have this. I got annoyed by it because I was like, I understand that this is in the Marvel Universe, but I'm annoyed that you're having these little things happen in this tone that you've set up that's very much like you said, Nick, a 70s like paranoid spy thriller. And if this was an actual 70s paranoid spy thriller and not a Captain America Marvel movie, it would not none of that would be okay, you know?
Yeah.
Well, when it's funny, it's funny because I actually haven't had a chance to talk to you guys about the movie since I think we've all seen it, but it's one of this is actually the first that I've really heard of people talking about it being like a 70s spy thriller, because one of the things I loved about it was that kind of the first Captain America movie was set in the 50s, and it felt like it fit in that time frame, kind of like, you know, Captain America going to fight, you know, these Nazi villains who had these death machines, and just kind of like the 50s tone, kind of, or the 40s and 50s tone, you know, kind of like that whole World War II area. It really fit it really well, as in he was, you know, riding his motorcycle, he had the shield, the big, you know, the red, white, and blue suit, and that kind of stuff. It was a very rousing, kind of patriotic, kind of a fun movie. And then this one, I felt like, because it was updated to modern times, they didn't try to go for the same thing. They went for something more modern, more tactical. You know, instead he's going up against these terrorists. There's less of a focus on the action, more of a focus on the conspiracy, and okay, who's trying to do this? You know, who's really behind everything. And it felt much more like a modern day, I guess I want to say conspiracy terrorist movie, if that's a genre. But I mean, like even things down to Captain America's suit is much more of it feels like something that Marines, or you know, the just kind of like the Army would make him wear today, make it more tactical and darker and that kind of stuff, which I thought was really interesting. So it's kind of like it's a different kind of Captain America movie with the same character, but just kind of juxtaposed between, you know, the World War II movie and then the modern day movie.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really enjoyed the movie. I haven't seen a Marvel movie that I have not really. Actually, that's not true. The only Marvel movie I haven't enjoyed is the first Captain America movie, which I thought was absolutely miserable and basically strung together montages trying to create a plot that I cared about, which failed ultimately. And before anyone else says anything, you rewatch that movie, there are a lot of montages. There's just probably a good 10 minutes of that movie that is montage, which is too much.
The montages are my favorite part.
Yeah, but there's like, when that's just filling up time to replace any sort of plot, I think that's problematic. It's also just a giant commercial for the Avengers, which this one was not. This one I think was very good and very entertaining, and also we'll get to spoilers in like literally 30 seconds, but the twists that this movie sort of takes too I think are pretty solid, especially if you were able to stay away from a lot of the marketing. My girlfriend, like, when one of the big reveals happened, she literally like gasped and was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it!" You know. So it was I think it was a lot of it really worked. But my least favorite parts of the movie were the comic book-esque parts that I've heard other people review and be like, "Yeah, you know, audiences totally went with it." And I guess it just bothered me that audiences went with certain parts of it, because I felt like they only worked because they were in a Captain America movie, which I guess is okay because you're watching a Captain America movie, but it just bothered me that these kinds of movies that are kind of dumbed down are replacing what could be a real conspiracy spy thriller, you know?
Yeah, it's funny that the kind of the sci-fi elements of the movie bugged you, because that was something that I actually really enjoyed. Honestly, I wasn't going into the movie expecting a spy thriller, where it kind of like, if I had been expecting that, I probably would have enjoyed those moments more. But I didn't not enjoy them. I mean, it's basically, the movie would go through phases where I get really into the plot, but then after a while, you know, after about 10 minutes had gone by, I'd think, well, nothing really Captain America has happened yet. And then they throw in like the computer scene with Dr. Zola, and I was like, holy cow, that's awesome. It fits right in with the same universe, and I really enjoyed that. But even though it's not realistic and it's kind of silly, it still felt like it fit in the movie for me. Even though this movie is more of a realistic Marvel movie than a lot of the other ones. I really enjoyed that they threw in that kind of stuff every once in a while, like Falcon's suit. You had Zola in the computer, even the Winter Soldier, with his metal arm, that kind of stuff.
And that's I guess what I mean is like in the movie it's entertaining and it works, but then when you think about it like based off of what Nick was saying, how people like are sort of complaining about the number of superhero movies we're getting, the reason it bothers me outside of the watching the movie is because people are talking about it as if it is a replacement, and people are going to see this movie and claiming it's like, oh, it's a conspiracy spy thriller, but usually if we were getting a conspiracy spy thriller these days, we'd be getting something much smarter than Captain America, and that's why it bothers me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, although I do think it's a little unfair to put superhero movies, especially or even Marvel movies, on kind of a lower pedestal than quote unquote real movies. I mean like this one in particular, I won't argue to say it's a necessarily a very smart movie, but I mean like taking it out of the superhero context, I'd say it's a fine movie in general. Just kind of like as an action movie.
It's as an
I'd say
action
it's comparable
movie.
to a lot of the other stuff coming out these days. It's not superhero related.
As an action movie, I'd actually say it's amazing. Like some of the action in this movie is the best I've seen. I can't even think. I think it was the action in this movie was like better than almost anything in the Dark Knight series. Like just all the fight scenes in this were really entertaining and felt very like dangerous to me, and it was really, I thought the action was incredibly well done. And I think the movie's quite good. It more just bothers me in terms of how people are talking about it.
Right.
And talking about it as and this is, I know I am in the very much the minority here, but I would rather get another Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy than another Captain America movie. And of course that's not going to happen, but that's just, I guess, my taste in movies, and I look out at the world and I think, oh man, like it's kind of sad that nobody wants that, but everybody wants another Captain America movie. Anyway, we gotta keep moving, so we're gonna move it into spoilers. And I guess like I said, I think a lot of the twists really worked. From this point forward, we're going to be talking about spoilers for Captain America: The Winter Soldier. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, this is to the audience. Please move to the end of the podcast. So yeah, spoiler alert. Yeah, I thought a lot of the twists really worked in the movie. Although there was this is something that bothered me in the movie, like Nick Fury getting away in that moment with the little drill thing. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I wanted them to shoot him in the head because there was no way for him to escape.
Yeah, I know. Was that really did anyone actually believe that he was dead though in the movie?
I did.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I had no idea that. In fact, that was another thing that bothered me. I actually was like, oh shoot, they killed Nick Fury.
Yeah. Which I mean, I don't know if this is considered a spoiler because it hasn't happened. I mean, it might happen in the movies, but like the whole in the comics anyway, like if Sam Jackson's contract runs up, I wouldn't doubt if they killed him off or got rid of him, and then what's her name, Kobe Smolder's character, Maria Hill, takes over.
Yeah.
So,
but
that's what, like, I would have loved it if that's what happened. And like, I mean, in the comics, like Shield has been replaced by, I think it's called Sword or something else anyway. So like, I wouldn't doubt if that kind of happens in the next few movies anyway.
Yeah.
But,
when he was still alive, I totally rolled my eyes. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. because the thing that kind of bothers me is so Nick Fury's come back to life. Bucky's come back to life. Even though it didn't happen in the movies, Coulson's come back to life. It's like we need to kill more characters who are going to just like stay dead, you know?
Exactly.
No, one of the biggest disappointments for me was I was really surprised that Robert Redford didn't turn out to be Red Skull. Honestly.
Oh yeah, a lot of people were hoping for that, but
You
I don't
know,
know if that would have.
if that had happened, I might have walked out of the movie.
Yeah, I think that would have been a little ridiculous, especially for like the tone. Even though there's still some comic booky things in the movie, I think that would have really been the tipping point.
Well, it's funny because I know Brian and I were watching it together, and during the movie, like whenever Robert Redford was on screen, we're all like Red Skull, and like towards like the end when he gets shot and he falls down, we're like okay, he's gonna get up, he's gonna pop his mask, he's gonna be Red Skull, and then like it cuts to the end credits, they're like all right, well we'll wait for the after credits scene, and then they tease like a Hydra guy in there, and we were like, oh no, it's gonna be Red Skull. Like no, it's someone else.
That's interesting though. Like Robert Redford, at the very end of the movie, kind of has a moment that is kind of ridiculous when you think about it, but he manages to play it like he manages to get away with it and not look ridiculous, which is him shot and dying and going "Hail Hydra," which is like the last thing you ever expect to come out of Robert Redford's mouth, you know?
I don't know if it's just me, but expecting like huge villain deaths from these Marvel movies, but I was actually kind of disappointed that after he got shot, he just kind of went down and then just died.
But I mean, that's the type of villain he is. He's not the kind of guy that you like drop from a 100-story building or have blow up or whatever. You know,
exactly.
He's way more political.
It makes more sense, yeah, because he isn't a super villain, so like it makes sense that he would just die from a bullet wound. Just for me, it was just kind of like, oh, he got shot. Well, that's right. I guess he is just human.
Yeah, the one other twist that would have worked for me if it was a more believable disguise was Black Widow.
I was kind of disappointed in that.
If she was Red Skull?
Because this random council chick just starts like kicking ass, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Who is this person? That's like, oh, it's Black Widow. Like, I was kind of disappointed because I thought we were gonna get like a really cool character reveal, and then it was just Black Widow.
Yeah, I thought like we were gonna find out like, oh, this woman is like a badass in real life, and then it's like, oh, it's Black Widow in like the most ridiculous disguise. It's like super advanced Mission Impossible technology.
Yeah.
Which was annoying, and I'm sure Joe loved.
Yeah, that was fine. It was whatever.
But that was another thing that didn't work. We really got to move it along, but I just wanted to bring up one last thing. The end tags. I am super stoked to see Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch. I am not a fan of Aaron Tyler Johnson, but that just those little teases at the end, I thought were pretty. Those were like the best end, or what do you call them, like stingers.
Yeah.
That I think Marvel's had yet in terms.
I have a problem with not the stingers themselves, but so this happened in Thor also. So the mid credits teaser or stinger, it kind of hints at like a future movie. So like Thor hinted at Guardians of the Galaxy. This one hints at the next Avengers movie. But the last stinger, which comes not at the halfway point but at the very end of the credits, feels like it really should be an integral part of the movie.
Right. So it feels like that should have been either right before the end credits or
in the middle when like people are still walking out. So like in this one, it's Bucky kind of like going back and trying to figure out who he is, which is like that's kind of important to kind of figure out what the next Captain America is. It feels like, whatever Captain America 3 is going to do, that's going to be a huge part of it. And then the one that bothered me the most was in Thor 2. I know this is a little off topic, but because the very end of that movie is Thor coming back to Earth and reuniting with Jane, and it's like the movie actually doesn't end until that point. And I feel like if you're going to put anything in the after credits thing, it shouldn't be integral to the actual movie. Like it should, if it's going to hint at another movie, or if it's just a playful, funny thing. Like in the Thor 2 when they have that creature thing that's still running around. If that was what that whole stinger was, I would have been okay with it. But I think the fact of like that Marvel's putting scenes that feel like they should be part of the actual movie, like at the very end of the credits, I don't know, it just kind of feels cheap to me, you know?
Yeah, no, it feels like putting the like the stuff for the Guardians of the Galaxy and then the stuff for Avengers 2 as the first stinger, to me, again, is like, while I liked the stingers, is like free advertising for Marvel, a way, like an excuse to advertise their next movie, and then like push the second stinger to the end when it should be the first one.
Which is funny because I don't know if you guys remember the Incredible Hulk movie, but they don't have stingers in the movie, but that movie also kind of suffers from a similar thing where what should be the last scene is Bruce Banner in a cabin, and it kind of zooms up on him, and you don't know whether he's either learned to control the Hulk or whether he's gonna lose control of it. And then instead of cutting to the credits like it should, it cuts to that scene where Tony Stark shows up and meets the general guy in the bar, and it kind of like, and the movie ends on that note, and it's like that's always kind of been my complaint, is the way, it's not the teasers themselves, but kind of sometimes their placement in the movies, and it kind of continued with this one. So hopefully, I don't know what their main reason is behind that. Maybe they figure like, I mean, I think the point is that they think more people will stick around for the first teaser, so that they do get that publicity for the next movie. But I think that's kind of detrimental to the movie when there's a whole other teaser that is actually completes a character arc or hints at something that was for the purpose of the actual movie that you paid to go see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Paul, I know you mentioned earlier that first Captain America felt like it was a trailer for the Avengers when it literally had one. I don't know why you didn't get that vibe from this one though. Didn't you see the little tag at the end that says Captain America will return in the Avengers: Age of Ultron?
Yeah, but the movie itself didn't feel like we have to do all this so that we can put this character in the Avengers.
I don't know that tag at the end. I don't know. It made the whole movie feel like a trailer to me.
Dude, the Avengers, or sorry, the Captain America, the first Avenger, has like specific scenes that are there simply to introduce what's going to be like the goal in, or the desired object in the Avengers. It doesn't even really play that big of a role in Captain America. They just put scenes in there so that you're introduced to the blue cube that becomes.
But couldn't you say that's the same thing that happens in Thor? Also, it's set up Loki. It sets up. I mean, because like that movie's pretty Shield oriented, because Coulson's a pretty big part of it. I don't know. Like, I think you could make that argument for most of the Phase 1 Marvel movies that they were all.
Dude, not at all. Like, not at all to the same extent that Captain America is, because, and you can even tell in the way that the filmmaking went. Like when they did the first Iron Man, that they weren't sure that was even going to work. So that you can say that's an exception. But then when they did Iron Man 2 and Thor, the first Thor, they were still testing. It was still are we going to be able to do this? And then Captain America literally feels shoehorned in, even release dates wise, just so they could have him in the Avengers. And the tone, while yes, their Shield is present in Thor. If you go back and watch Thor and Captain America, those first ones, the first Thor feels very much like a complete story arc for that character. It doesn't feel the same way for Captain America.
Yeah.
It just feels like we're going to freeze him, and then we're going to end the movie so that he's waking up and he can be in the Avengers.
Yeah, I wish one of my things before this podcast, I really wanted to rewatch the first Captain America movie just so I could actually have, because it's been a while since I've watched it, so I can't quite bring up the movie as readily as I would have been. But I do agree with you with the montage thing, because I think the World War II aspect of Captain America is really interesting, and I kind of hate that it skips over a lot of it. So I remember when they first announced Captain America 2, I was almost hoping that they would pull a Godfather Part 2 and have somehow be able to balance half of a movie in World War II and half of it in modern time, and somehow connect it in a way that didn't feel weird or whatever. Because I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff that you could do in that time period, and to just waste it all in one movie and a pretty good montage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe, did you have anything else to say? We sort of got to wrap up.
Nope, that's fine. I mean, that's everything. I love the first one. I love the second one. Let's see more.
Yeah, the first one's garbage. No, I'm just kidding.
I actually think the Captain America character is one of the better characters in the Marvel universe. I know, like, it was kind of hard to see that in the first one because he doesn't actually really have that much of a character arc. But I think with what they've done with him in Avengers and then with this one, I think he's actually becoming one of the more interesting characters because he's not a snarky person like Tony Stark or some of the other characters. Like he's a fairly innocent guy with his head on his shoulders, but he's not naive though, and I think he's a very interesting counterpart to the other characters.
Yeah. All right. Well, that pretty much concludes our podcast for the day. Nick, where can people find you or follow you online?
They can follow me on Twitter at Shout92.
And Joe?
Credo Films at Twitter.
And you can follow me at PFDUDA, that's at PFDUDA, on Twitter. And again, you can find more of our episodes as well as articles and film news and analysis on our website, the-letterbox.com. You can find our podcast episodes on iTunes by searching for Outside the Letterbox and on FeedBurner. Again, leave us a review, whether it's positive or negative. It'll help us out, or comment on our website. And tune in next week. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to talk about next week, guys.
We'll figure something out.
Yeah. I'm sure there's something.
So maybe we'll let you know through Facebook or anything. So, and like us on Facebook. Anyway, that's it. We'll see you guys next week.